Welcome to the Good Ideas Club.
where big ideas spark even bigger conversations. Today's guest has a rare blend of technical, entrepreneurial, and financial experience. He's also a stand-up comedian. Marc Cohen is the founding partner of Unbundled VC, a venture capital firm investing in Europe-based software and AI founders who aspire to move into and win in the US market. And Marc was a seed investor in Runna, later acquired by Strava. He created one of the world's earliest AI poker platforms, and he's got big plans for the future. We deep dive into stepping out of your comfort zones, what makes a good founder, the impact and future of AI, and much, much more.
Hey Mark, welcome to the Good Ideas Club, and it is great to have you on. Tell us a little bit more about your background.
Yeah, great to be on. My background, I guess I'll start from university. I won't go back any earlier than that. Don't bore you too much. I did maths at Cambridge. Like good for intelligence, not necessarily good for personality. And then went into the city in London. I was an interest rate swap trader at banks for 7 years. And then a kind of weird thing happened. I think, okay, small sidetrack. A chunk of South African friends for another super random reason, which we can really go into if you want. And they all go on surf trips, and I used to go on surf trips with them. And on one of those surf trips, one of them randomly gave me a book on AI, which I read and was like, that was super interesting. I'd had a good year at the bank. I'd had a nice bonus. Wasn't in a long-term relationship, and so I was kind of free to go, what do I want to do? And I actually then just quit and went and did a master's in AI. And it was one of those sort of like sliding doors moments where I don't do it now, I'll buy a bigger place, I'll end up in a long-term relationship, I'll never get to go do it. So yeah, and this was 2001. A lot of people don't realize AI was going on then. AI has been going on for like kind of ever. Yeah, so I went to masters in AI. There was nothing at like Oxford or Cambridge, so I went to Sussex University in Brighton and did that. I met my wife, who was doing her undergrad. There's a weird story around that as well, if you want. And so when she finished, I was like, I should probably go earn some money again. Went and joined like a prop trading group in London, and I built systematic trading side of that up to become sort of eventually all of that business. Did a side project in poker and AI with a friend where we built what was then the world's best sort of poker AI. The only competition was academia, who were like, at the time, who were like seriously pissed that someone outside academia was doing better stuff than them. I've just realized this is like the long version of my intro, even though I've said I haven't included all the stories. And but there was no like legal way to make any money out of that. So I brought that friend into the trading business, and we built the sort of AI version of that trading system. And the last 8 years of that, I actually lived and worked remotely from Lugano in the Italian bit of Switzerland, which is lovely. And then we moved here to Guernsey, sort of coming up to 7.5 years ago. Yeah, so my wife and my 4 kids, who are now 18, 15, 12, and 11. When you have that many, you actually have to think about it, how old they are. Yeah, and got into venture, and at some point decided to sort of set up on my own, and built a portfolio, and that's been going quite well. And I sort of now invest in sort of Europe-based founders who are sort of targeting the US market, partly because that US market is like way bigger than like sort of individual European domestic markets, partly because like it is a little bit harder to do it. And so it's a filter for people with the right ambition level and will do what it takes attitude. And I've spent like a good amount of time in the States building a network of funds that can help them raise their next round out there. The more random stuff that I do that I think you guys know about is I do some stand-up comedy on the side, which I really enjoy, and is actually I both enjoy and it like gives you like a chunk of useful skills that are actually transferable. And we actually run our own sort of monthly gig out here in Guernsey now as well, which is quite fun. So that's probably longer than you wanted, but
No, that's
that's me.
perfect. That's perfect, because now we can get our claws in and unpick some of that. I love that. I love that. When we met, Marc, I was drawn to you and definitely knew that you'd be a great episode guest because of the variety, this like the simple variety, not only of sectors, but different places around the world and different educational organizations. There's so much to unpack there. And as someone who considers myself a kind of diverse, oddball, like I haven't just done one thing, I've bounced between loads of different stuff. I personally really value that. And so I'm desperately hoping we can get into detail on all of those areas, albeit I know we only have a limited amount of time. I'd love to, like, one of the key areas that I think is so unique with you is your story of how you got into stand up. From my memory of our initial conversation, it was something about forcing yourself out of your comfort zone.
Yeah.
So just share that story kind of in as much detail as you can, because I think there's huge value in that.
So about, it must have been 7 years ago originally, I read some article about deliberately putting yourself in like difficult situations, right? Just to, that being good for you, making yourself more comfortable with stuff, as you said. And I think there were three examples in the article. I can't remember all of them. One of them was like literally next time you're at a restaurant at dinner, just walk up to the table that looks the least like it wants to have a conversation and just start a conversation with them. Even if it's two people on a date, it doesn't matter what it is, just go and like try and have a conversation with them. I think one of the others was like deliberately sit in the wrong seat on a plane. And when someone comes up to you, say, no, this is my seat. I think I did that by accident on my last flight, not deliberately, thinking I was in the right seat. But you know how uncomfortable that is when you're actually in the thing. And then eventually I was like, okay, I want to go do something. And I ended up booking myself on an improv residential in the UK, never having done any improv before. It was like a 4-day residential, and I'm a little bit chatty. And so I was like, okay, that will just like translate into being good at this. And then I got there and I absolutely sucked. I was so bad and I was freezing all the time. I got over that now, but I ended up having a lovely time by the end of that trip because all the people were just so nice. Shout out to the Maydays if any of those people ever do that. They have wonderful courses. Yeah, so I did that, and then actually eventually someone started running some courses in Guernsey, which I did because like I knew I enjoyed it. And then the same person that was running those courses said about 2.5 years ago, hey, I'm going to run a stand-up course. And I was like, okay, I'll go do that, see what that's like. So I did that course, had the classic sort of end of course performance where the people who've been on the course do their like 5 minutes. And I closed that course, closed that show. It went like reasonably well, even though you got to remember that audience is like the most warm, supportive audience you will ever have when you're doing stand up. But like that went pretty well. And I had no intention to ever do it again. I was like, well, that went kind of well. Now would seem crazy to never do it again. So I booked myself on a couple of open mics in London the next time that I went. They went okay. I wasn't the best person, but I wasn't the worst person. But yeah, that was really the start of it. So
Have you ever come across the YouTube channel? I think it's called Kill Tony, Mark,
I
where the
I
jokes are
am
just so
familiar
unfunny.
familiar with Kill Tony. I was actually in Austin as part of one of my US trips earlier in the year, but like wasn't there on a Monday evening, which is I think when they film it. I would have put my name in the hat. I'm not sure that I would have done well at that point. I think I'd be better now. But yeah, and I actually saw we're on a podcast. Joe Rogan obviously has like the biggest podcast in the world. Pretty much what do you think about him? He also has a yeah, you'll get there. You'll get there. Stretch goals. But like he has opened a club in Austin and I did go there one night and Tony kind of see what was going on, not because it was really my kind of thing. And Tony Hinchcliffe, who is the Tony from that, did actually show up and do a set that evening, including one joke where he finished off with, "Oh, you won't hear that at Madison Square Gardens." And so you can draw your own conclusions as to what kind of content might have been in that.
And what sort of people attended these courses with you? Like, are they people like you who are kind of, pushing themselves out of their comfort zone, doing new things, or are these people who have trained in kind of acting or consider themselves to be thespians and want to kind of branch out? Who did you meet?
So I think one of the reasons I like doing improv and stand up is that I do meet like completely different people that I don't meet in my like normal day, and it just like broadens that set of people. And so yeah, there's a mix. You get some people that have done some drama, that kind of thing. I think there's probably more of those when you do stuff in London that have come out of that are doing drama, and it's like, oh, this is an adjacent skill or another possible performing path to success, because all those paths are hard, actually. Yeah, but you just get like a really nice mix of people that just do lots of different things.
I'd like to actually bring this slightly back to VC. I just recently finished reading Peter Thiel, and in his 0 to 1, one of the kind of main points that he had was the founder archetype and what that looks like. So I suppose the question is like, how do you identify world-class founders, and are they the kinds of people that are oddballs by trade, or is there like a specific set of attributes and traits that you see in every single founder?
So I think there's a specific set of attributes and traits. They do have to have something odd about them, right? Because for me, one of my filters is, if the right thing was to move to the US, if that would help your business, would you do it? And as a person, I would never say, hey, you should go do that as an individual, right? That's a very personal decision. Do you want to do that? You might have to uproot a family or all these kinds of things. And so those traits are, you have to be driven, right? You have to really want to do it, and you have to be driven. So in some sense, I don't know whether that's oddball, it's certainly non-standard. The level of drive that you need and ambition that you need to want to do that is not what sits in the average person. But yeah, there is a set of traits that you are looking for, and some of those are just being better at things than the average person. And some of them are, you just have to want this, and you have to want it enough that you will do what it takes to go for that huge outcome. One of the reasons that matters in venture is venture, at least early stage venture, which is what I do, is not actually about how many things that you invest in win. It's about how big the outliers are. And actually that means you need people who really want to go for it, because otherwise it caps the upside.
Yep. There's a stat from YC where I think the 2012 batch, out of 280 of them, two produced over 75% of the actual return. So it really is the kind of disproportionate outliers effect that you do get. Actually,
Yeah.
I don't want to segue too many things, but the elephant in the room here is Runna, and the kind of whole story
Yep.
behind that, because that was a huge one. And I mean, as a runner myself and aspiring marathon runner, like that is the perfect app. And Strava's recently acquired it now, and it's just like it's awesome. So tell us a bit more about that.
So Runner was introduced to me. The founder was introduced to me by another founder that I'd sort of previously invested in. And he's like, hey, I run every day. I've never stuck with anything else before, but I've stuck with this. I really like the founder. Do you want to meet him? And so I ended up, and also I was like, I actually have a process where it's like go through a video pitch, and you do the video pitch, and then the pitch was good, and then I do an in-person or video call meeting. And so, but I was a bit skeptical, if I'm honest, because I was like, this feels like something that ought to have been done before. One of the classic rules in venture is if it seems too obvious, like probably it's a bad idea, because like 20 people have tried and failed, and you just don't realize why they've tried and failed. That's a little bit different in the sort of time of AI, because there were good reasons why people couldn't build things 2-3 years ago. In general, that's a good rule to have. And it felt like, yeah, this is kind of too obvious a thing. And then by chance, I was pitched by two running apps in consecutive days, by Runner and one other app the day beforehand. I've never ever had an application from a running app before that. They just happened to happen on consecutive days. And then I met them. I think Ben pitched me, and I was just kind of blown away. I literally went out and bought like running. I hadn't like run for like 25 years. I went out and bought running shoes. Like the sort of level of sort of energy and engagement and enthusiasm he was able to generate in me, I was like, this is a good sign. It's not the only thing I'm looking for, but like that's a good founder skill to have, that you can make someone who didn't want to do it, who was kind of skeptical coming into this, really want to go out and do this. And then everything was kind of right about the business. It was they were growing super fast. The unit economics were good. They hadn't really tried to hit the US, but they already had like, I think over 10% of their customers were there. I'm trying to remember all the things because it's quite a while ago now. They'd done a proper MVP, which is quite rare, where they'd literally gone, they hadn't even built an app. They'd gone, we're going to try and sell people like PDFs of running plans for like £5 a week, something like that. And people did buy them, of like personalized running plans. Running culture feels, and some of that US clientele did prove some of this as well, but feels like it's similar kind of everywhere, right? Which means you don't have the issue of, oh, I built this in one place. Do people actually want it in another place, right? If running culture is similar, that issue goes away. What else was there? There were probably like 5 other things that I liked about it at the time. I think it was just bottom up. It was clear it was a big enough market to generate a venture scale outcome, which is interesting because I've seen some other people write about it that they didn't think it was at that point, but actually it wasn't that hard to figure out. Just start with the Western world, figure out like how many people run races a year, do a finger in the air of, I think, this proportion of people, and they could charge this much. They can probably sell some adjacent items. How big do I think that will be? This stuff, when you're doing bottom up, it's like science and art, but it's never rocket science. And if you're making it too rocket science, then probably you've got false precision. But like, it was clear it was big enough to generate a venture scale outcome. And that piece is interesting because I've seen other people write that one of the reasons they didn't invest in that round is that they couldn't see the market size. So those are all the things I can remember. Like, founders were right, market was right, easy to understand business. I committed very quickly and was fortunate to get into the round. The other thing was, I think that it was hugely oversubscribed, that round. The founder that originally introduced me wrote a very nice email extolling my virtues, which was very kind of him. And then they took 2 other founder references for me to get into that deal. And there are a chunk of people, despite there were some people that did pass, obviously there are on every deal, there's also a chunk of people that tried to get into that deal and didn't. So I'll always be grateful, both for the nice references that people gave me, but also to the founders for allowing me to be sort of part of it, because they could have taken other people.
That sounds like a great story. I'd like to drill into that a little bit more. Maybe an introduction to the founder. We get him on the show and hear the story. Just out of interest, I don't know the product. I've heard of it, but I from the conversation I picked up personal running plans. What did the product do differently than other products existing at that time?
So I don't think there were personalized running plans, or there was one other, because it was the one that pitched me the day beforehand. But it is literally personal running training plans for like 5Ks and up, but starting at quite a low pace, right? I think it was like the filter was like, can you do it in 45 minutes? And people, if you walk fast, you can probably do a 5K in 50 minutes. And so,
And presumably, did it connect to because obviously at this point, like smart devices that monitored distance, steps, all that sort of stuff. Was it operating off real-time data, or was the MVP literally just PDFs of suggested data that you kind of fed into it?
So I think the PDFs was just like a personalized running plan, and I would imagine they just asked you. So I don't know, because I wasn't looking at it then. They already did have the app by the time I was speaking to them. But I would imagine there was a questionnaire, each week of, this is where you are, and then it produces it. And then over time, obviously they integrated with more and more of those things, and sort of now I'd imagine pretty much all of them.
Yeah, that's really cool. I love that. The product guy in me is really interested to kind of know. I love these MVP stories when you genuinely hear about a company that's built a really lean product, being able to prove their market fit and market potential, and then scale from there. I love those case studies. Another case study that you talk about quite often is Willow as well. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, and so they are they're like kind of pre-screen video interviews, and you can do non-video as well. And actually, I've used that. One of the reasons I talk about that is because I use it in my process. I use it for video pitch in my process rather than start with a pitch deck as that first filter. And the reason I do that is it does add a little friction. There are some people that go, oh, I can just throw my pitch deck at like 100 VCs, and now this person's asking me to do something else. But I think the people that understand their business well actually probably don't find it that hard to do. And you do need to be able to explain what you do, like concisely and compellingly, says the man who's given like 10 minutes answers to every question. But you can get a feel for founder strength from a video pitch, right, in a way that is hard from a pitch deck. So I think for me, the benefit is you do have to like screen out most things that you see very early. I take much better first meetings, because what happens sometimes is with a lot of VCs is you take a first meeting off a pitch deck, and within a minute or two you can tell, I don't care how good this idea is, but I'm probably not going to invest in this founder. Doesn't mean they're not a nice person, but like they're not someone that I'm gonna. You see enough people and you can get a feel for these things very quickly, but you're committed to like a 30, 45-minute meeting, and you're kind of wasting everybody's time at that point. I take a lot better first meetings because you can get a feel for founder strength from a video in a way that you can't from a pitch deck.
There's loads of parallels here, even in the hiring industry. So I don't know if Willow pioneered the way and HireVue and those kind of platforms came after, or if it was simultaneously. But either way, that medium of being able to like properly just gauge someone, because CVs bastardize who you are as a person, just as pitch decks can be kind of skewed and made up or exaggerated, if that makes sense. And as you say, maybe the largest portion of success is due to the founder of most businesses. So, and I mean, it's just awesome to be able to, if you think about it, if you were to allocate that 1 hour in your calendar, you could do like 20 Willow interviews and even give feedback if you wanted to and make notes and everything. So that ratio is just kind of unmatched, right? So I'd like to kind of drill in a little bit more into founder dynamics and, what the kind of nuances are that you pick up through the years of maybe initially when you first started out in VC, what you kind of would have picked up or wouldn't have picked up. So, some of the kind of shortfallings, but also the differences between, let's say, a first-time founder and a second or multi-stage founder.
So yeah, that's interesting. So I think theoretically what you're looking for is the right skills, right? Rather than someone has done it 2 times or 3 times before. In practice, someone who has done it like twice before is just more likely to have those skills, right? But that's why people like second-time founders, for example, or third-time founders, because they naturally have picked up some of that skills and expertise. But in practice, all you're looking for is that skill and expertise. And obviously, if you can find that in a first-time founder, it's probably going to be easier to get into that deal. You may even get into a better price, because there are so many people that go, I only invest in second-time founders. I don't really care. I care about what your skill set is. So, yeah, I mean, it's not so different to like I talked about, like that I went to Cambridge. Cambridge is meant to be a filter for people that, have certain skills, but actually if I'm picking a founder, I don't even look at where you went to university or if you went to university. I back myself just to be able to tell if you're good and you have that set of skills, right? Rather than you've got a badge and therefore I'm going to assume that. And I think there's a chunk of people that do go, hey, I only invest in people that went to this university. If it's the US, it might be that only people that come out of MIT or, Ivy League, or I only invest in second-time founders. All they're doing is going, because they've got this badge, they are more likely to have this set of skills. But, there are bad second-time founders out there, right? There are people that went to good universities who are not going to be good founders. The critical thing is, do you have the set of skills that is necessary and that is really going to help you get there? And I will back myself to pick those people irrespective of what they've done before or what university they went to.
Do you think there's at the moment, AI is obviously the hot topic right now, and there seems to be a lot of AI products popping up. We can discuss whether or not you think there's a bubble behind that, but is it going to be so much harder for you to cut through that noise, given the amount of products that will be released as part of this kind of AI wave? And then even the fact that you can potentially even polish what you're saying, that's more difficult to kind of hack, as it were, if you are having the detailed video call or meeting with someone. You can't get beyond the human interaction. But is your job becoming more difficult as a result of more products? Or like you said earlier, is it just always been this way? There's plenty of products out there. And even if you double that, it doesn't necessarily make it more or less hard for you.
So in terms of volume of deal flow, I mean, volume of deal flow is good. You really just want as much deal flow as possible, and then you just have to put in place the right filters to deal with it. But yeah, at the moment, everything in software pretty much claims to be an AI product. And helpfully, I've actually done some AI, so I can hopefully pick through the noise and see what really is and what isn't.
But it goes back to the kind of well, another question of the whole, is there truly any real innovative companies, those kind of 0 to 1s left, or is everything going forward going to be some GPT or AI wrapper of some sort?
No, I think there are lots of innovative businesses out there, right? That doesn't stop, because if there were innovative businesses pre-AI, there must be innovative businesses post-AI. Well, either one of two things must be true. There are innovative businesses and problems still to be solved, or an LLM will solve every single problem in the world, right? And so one or other of those things must be true. I don't believe that LLMs on themselves are going to be. They are going to be. They do a lot of things, but they are going to be the platform, or at least the APIs are the platform on which a lot of businesses will be built. In the same way that the internet was the platform on which a lot of businesses was and continues to be built. So it's actually an enabler for people to do things that could just never be done before.
I've heard some people say that the internet was different to AI because the internet was an infrastructure that other things could be built on, and AI is just another tool within that existing infrastructure. Do you think that's true, or does AI in itself act as an infrastructure for more things to emerge from it?
I mean, of course it does, because there's an API and you build products using that API, whether that's OpenAI or Gemini or whatever, or DeepSeek or whatever you're using. The internet is a structure that still has a physical base that lives upon the world. Nothing is independent of what came before, I think, is the reality for all of these pieces.
And tell us more about your. I'm interested to know more about your poker AI. So what year was this? Did you say was this?
This was probably the 2000s, so it's quite a long time ago. But we did build, yeah, I said the world's best poker AI. We did limit hold'em rather than no limit hold'em, just because we were building this on a like £2,000 PC 20 years ago. And so, yeah, slightly less compute than people have nowadays. So I guess it's kind of like the early days of programming, where you had no processing power or like memory, and so it forced you to be creative and think hard about how you did stuff. But it was the sort of earliest stages of sort of deep learning, and I think for us, reinforcement learning in particular. I don't but that was really good fun, and what we produced really was best in class. And we played online matches against the sort of best other people. We had a website where you could come and play against us, and we had some of the sort of best Hold'em players in the world come and sort of try out against us, and we more than held our own, even back then. So that was kind of fun. I would say we tried to build a business out of it, but honestly, looking back, we had no idea what we were doing from a business. We were amazing at the technology, but had no idea what we were doing from a business perspective. Looking back at us, technologically, yes, but as running a business, wildly unbackable founders.
Kind of off the back of, I suppose, not gambling, but trying to understand probabilities. So we've got recently the news that came out with Michael Burry kind of stepping down, admitting that he's out of touch, right? For context for listeners, he was the one that kind of called the 2008 housing crisis. And you had stories back in the day in the 2000s where famously founders would start IPOing before the company's even properly registered, and that kind of anarchy and bubble like stage. Now, the
Yep.
natural question here is, with AI, you've obviously got NVIDIA, who recently hit earnings despite all kind of everyone thinking there's no way they're going to be able to match the flywheel that's behind them. So the question really is, do you think AI valuations are rightfully as high as they are? Is the growth exponential from here, or are we going to ride that wave all the way down?
So there's a lot in this question, right? There's stock market valuations, there's Google, Meta, who are throwing money at this, there's NVIDIA, there's OpenAI, so there's private market valuations, and there's kind of an opportunity set, and they're related, but they're not all the same thing. One general principle, and I'm not giving anyone stock market advice here, but is that when everyone is shouting about a bubble, at least valuation wise, probably there isn't one, right? Or probably the valuations are not going to do that. This is a classic thing, having been a financial markets trader. If everyone believes the market's going to go down, it isn't going to go down. Subject to events. If there's a big event, right, it can happen. But like until that event happens, the market just, that's not how it works. And similarly, if everyone thinks the market's going up, it will very rarely actually go up. It's much more likely to do the opposite. So that's kind of the first thing. Do I think, and let's pick OpenAI as the biggest example, do I think its valuation is right? Honestly, very hard to know. Even at a valuation, I know most recently like 500 billion or whatever it is, how big is the opportunity size? Well, actually, the opportunity size is potentially to be the biggest company in the world, right? To be bigger than a Google, right? To be that existential threat that replaces it. And that means even here, there's a 10x opportunity for OpenAI, right? Potentially bigger. And so if you go, well, could OpenAI still go to zero, right? Because it isn't profitable and there's lots of competition out there. Even if it could still be the right risk reward bet, right? So do I know whether is there a chance that everything kind of blows up there? Yes. Do I think it will? Probably not. I think they'll find that worst case, they'll find a way through it, right? But is there still like good potential upside? Yes. And so actually as a risk reward bet, it might make sense. I don't know. The dynamics of that market are tough. That, there've been some, Google's latest model was good. They can kind of throw infinite money at stuff, at least as it stands. And so like from an equity perspective, you're going, well, is there still risk there, but is there still a lot of upside? Well, potentially, yes. So the short answer is, do I know whether that valuation makes sense or whether it's going to zero or to the other one? No, I don't know, but it is about that risk reward play, right? And so the other factor then is like there's a chunk of AI companies that do have big valuations that are building on those sorts of platforms, right? And we talked about the platform piece. So I'm going to tie that back into what we talked about, like the obvious problems that we talked about earlier, is there is a set of things that can be done now that you just couldn't even touch 2-3 years ago. And some of those opportunities are big opportunities. And if there are big opportunities that didn't exist before, that if you're the first mover and you can move fast and execute well, are big opportunities, sometimes you can justify what looks like an abnormal valuation even very early in your journey. Has that potentially been spread too widely? Yes, I think so. So is it, and so over time things start to normalize and every single business becomes an AI business, actually, not just the pitch decks, but they really are. They really are things that are building on top of those platforms in the same way as everything became, an internet business, and valuations start to normalize over time. I don't know whether I covered all the things. That was a lot of words. Yeah, hit me on whatever you want to hit me next.
I'll take the reins because an idea it's something that I think about fairly often, and I'd love to get your opinion on this. Do you think that the big companies, given their speed and ability to release new products, will swallow the niche AI products that, like you said, are existing on top of the core infrastructure? So, for example, an AI company that does something very specific, like, I don't know, voice generation, like 11 Labs or something like that. Are their core business models at risk by Google just doing something similar and integrating it to its existing platform of already integrated products and tools? Like, can the niche AI companies exist whilst the big ones simultaneously grow and expand and improve? Is probably a better, more rounded question.
So I think the question of, ever since I've been in venture, the classic question, but Google could do that, right? Or Facebook could do that. And the reality is, those are huge businesses. It has to be one of two things for them to decide they want to point their attention at it. It either has to be an insanely big opportunity, right? And actually, $1 billion like company outcome, or even $10 billion company outcome, doesn't move the needle for those businesses, right? Like that's less than like well less than 1% of their value, right? Even if it's a $10 billion business. Um, it has to be something that would move the needle for them, or it has to be something that is very adjacent to what they already do, where it's like, oh, if we do this, this is a natural addition to the set and suite of services that we offer to our customers, or some combination of them. So I think for a Google or a Facebook or a Meta in particular, that's the right thing. Is like, would it, if they did this well, would it move the needle? And is it a natural adjunct to what they already do? For an OpenAI, maybe it's a different kind of question, because it's like, oh, could they just do this? Because they're still figuring out exactly what that path is, right? What are the adjuncts that we could do? But even in the last sort of few days, we've seen that article about, like, they were trying lots of different things and they've gone, actually, we need to pull our focus back into the core product, because, this is a kind of death match. And so those are the ways that I think about these things anyway. Theoretically, Google could decide to do anything. In practice, there is a specific set of things that they will look at. And broadly, I think that's the criteria they would use.
So the book I'm reading at the moment it's a Harvard Business Review summary on AI, kind of has three core principles for any kind of spin-off or micro AI company to adhere to. And the first principle is the quality and uniqueness of your data set, that simply the big organizations either have, but it's just lost in the noise of everything else they've got in the world. So the quality and uniqueness of your data set, the speed of your feedback, so how quickly your product improves, and then the quality of its output and predictions. And if you can nail all three things there, your product will always be valuable against the bigger models, which are always going to kind of overgeneralize or make their output vanilla. And it's really interesting to me. I'm talking to some local businesses, particularly in the UK, that are having this dilemma right now. Do we build something for ourselves, or do we leverage existing tools and technologies? And just, like, I'm a big fan of Notebook LM because it kind of fits both worlds there. You're using a Google tool, but you're minimizing the AI hallucinations by controlling the data that sits within that. So for me, that's like a really good test case of how those two things can work in hybrid. What are your thoughts on those three principles?
So I think those three principles all make sense, but they're not the only ways to do it. Because you just think about any SaaS product that existed pre-AI. It's like, okay, there was a problem to solve that maybe the rest of the world didn't. You had a unique insight and you knew there was a problem to solve there that people would pay you money to go solve. And there will still be a set of those things. And those are probably the most interesting opportunities, where a unique insight means that that if you could build this product and solve these problems for businesses, that they would go and buy, that that there's a huge market out there. And those things are not necessarily going to be done by a Google or a OpenAI, because they're solving a very specific business use case that still in aggregate is huge, but is non-obvious to the everyday person. That insight still exists. The move fast and iterate is just true across every business. Whether you're iterating fast to like generate like a good MVP so you can find product as you're trying to find product market fit, or whether you're established and you're growing, you do just need to be able to iterate fast.
Hey, Mark, going back slightly to your stand-up days, what's been the biggest blunder you've made on stage?
I mean, I don't know whether I've made any blunders as such, but like I've had like, so I think I said earlier that I got to this point where I was like, okay, when I first started doing it, I actually started and I was all right. I went through a dip, which I came back out of. And I think, I mean, you could call this a blunder. It was actually, wasn't delivering material as me, right? It became a bit more performative. And so I'd say that's kind of the biggest thing, and a learning, which is you just stand there, and if you can deliver it that it sounds like just you, as if you're having a normal conversation with someone like this conversation, then it just always comes across way better. I mean, I think about one gig in particular where there weren't many laughs, and if I think about the ideas behind the sort of premises of the material, they were sort of okay actually, but the delivery was just like probably the actual words, but also the way I delivered them was just like, yeah, that's just not me. And there were a couple of random bits where I'd sort of ad-libbed based on what someone in the audience or a reaction from the audience where I like got good laughs, and I was like, that was the thing that sort of pointed me back in the right direction where I was like, okay, I need to listen to what's working and figure out why what isn't working isn't working. But the blunder was like the way I was performing, if anything.
I can't it's a horrendous thought to imagine being up on stage, trying to make people laugh, not feeling natural, and just this like pin drop silence across the audience. It must be one of the most character testing moments you have to endure.
So I do, because I'm here in Guernsey, and I try and do like a couple of things a week, right? And in general, apart from the one we run, and this is one of the reasons we started running it, it's like those are music open mics, and no one is there to listen to you. And so actually, the normal thing is that there are barely any laughs, or it's really hard to get laughs in those things. So I've kind of built up, as a result of that, I've built up like a chunk of resilience to it, where if you don't get a laugh, I'm like, I can just carry on and do this, and I will be
What
fine
percentage?
because
What percentage breakdown is like your body language and your delivery versus the content you're saying? Because like I imagine if there is that silence and you can almost your reaction to dealing with that, if you own it, can become funny in itself and show that you've still got control. Like I would assume, or is it if you were to crumble and break, there would be almost like sympathy and embarrassment across the audience, which should be irrecoverable.
so at those gigs, like a lot of the time, no one's paying any attention anyway. So, but they may not even notice whether you crumble or you don't crumble. But like the performance piece, that how you come on stage. So this is one of the things they say is the audience half makes up their mind about you before you've actually said a word. You sort of walk up, you take the mic out of the stand, you put the stand behind you, you walk up to the front. And if you just look like you're meant to be there, that is half the battle. And yes, you've got to have good material and good delivery as well, but that whole stuff builds confidence. Yeah, I could probably whistle on about that for a bit longer if you'd like.
How often do you have a joke where you kind of like you throw it out, right? And you think it's going to be funny. No one laughs at it, but do you let it simmer or do you just move swiftly on?
That's like on the night, or it sort of varies. So you you do pause between bits where you think that there'll be a punchline normally, and you need to sort of lean into those pauses. Sometimes if you pause and there's nothing, as long as you look completely fine with it, you can sort of brush it off. It does depend on your delivery style as well, because if you deliver stuff conversationally, then actually if there isn't a laugh and you were expecting one, the audience might not notice. And if you pay attention, even with like some of the top comics, you can go, I think they were expecting a laugh there and they didn't. But if you weren't paying attention, you wouldn't know that they were even hoping for a laugh in that spot. So some of it depends on delivery style, and different comics will have different delivery style. And some of it is like, if you look embarrassed that you didn't, or like, ugh, that's obviously horrible. But yeah.
I see. You're very active on LinkedIn and love following your posts. You talked about this ability to deliver presentations in a conversational style. Is this something
Yeah.
that you find natural, or do you still kind of rehearse that to the point when it feels organic to the audience, but you're in total control and kind of know what's coming next?
So LinkedIn, I think I have a conversational style, but it probably sounds a bit more nerdy than my actual
No, sorry,
I mean,
I meant you did a post about when you
oh,
talk in
okay.
person or you run events and you gravitate towards this more conversational style, even
Yeah,
when you're presenting solo,
for
which is something
sure.
that I would like to do personally. So yeah, I'd love to kind of learn from you on that.
Yeah, it definitely has helped with that. And just trying to deliver stuff so you said, do you prepare everything? So I think when day one, when you first do stand up, you literally know it. Typically, you know every single word you're going to say before you get up on stage. And then over time, and again, it's varies from person to person and how they want to do stuff. Over time, you're like, ugh, this now starts to sound a bit stilted. It maybe felt lovely and conversational the first time you did it because it was close to when you wrote it and you could feel the way that you wanted to deliver it when you wrote those words. And then you sort of go, well, I kind of just want to talk about this, and you go up and I want to talk about, and you just talk about something and sort of loosely know where the punchlines are. Um, and then you're trying to go, right, how do I get the right balance between this sounding and feeling organic, even to me, because it needs to feel organic to me to feel organic to you, and going, but actually those words, specific words, are probably better. And honestly, I'm still trying to figure some of that stuff out. I am not a professional comic where a load of people every night are trying to pay me a load of money to go on stage and go do this. I'm still
Here's a
working
question.
some of this stuff out.
Here's a question. If you got your big ticket to become a professional stand-up comedian, would you take it, or would you still stay on the finance world?
I'm not going to go and do that. I do want to be as good as I can possibly be, but like unless you get to the very top, it is a horrible grind where even some of the people that are quite famous probably don't earn that much money, right? And it's a brutal grind. You're a touring comic, you're going from place to place the whole time. It's not good for your like family life. I'll get on a plane whenever I need to for VC, but those guys are literally somewhere different every night, delivering like doing one, two, three sets. It's horrible and not getting paid much money. Like
The pressure to stay fresh must be.
it's the pressure to stay fresh, as in like it's a proper grind and not that much money unless you're like near the top of the pyramid, actually, in that industry. And so, if someone wants to pay me some money to go do some stuff, yeah, sure, I'll take that. But like, it's not going to be the thing that I do. I don't think. I think that's very unlikely.
Yeah.
Particularly if
Alex,
you've seen me perform.
Yeah, well, I'd love to. I'd love to come and see it, or even see some online stuff. But yeah, I'd love to come in person. Alex, are you ready for your bit yet? Have you warmed up?
I don't think anyone's warmed up for it. So the terrible pun that we've got lined up is,
Oh, God.
Mark, why did the pirate decide to go public?
Oh God, this is a pirate VC joke. This is gonna be. I'm like already like I'm already horrified. Go on. I don't know, why did the pirate decide to go public?
He was looking for an APO.
He was looking for.
Yeah, that
Don't
was a
even.
hard
I'm not
landing
even
on
sure.
that.
I'm not even sure I get it.
IPO. I probably didn't get the punch right.
Is it like some sort of like RPO? Maybe it should be like
Yeah, but
RPO.
like A, what's the A? Like R is normally the pirate joke. I don't act like it doesn't even
I'm
make
with
any
you.
sense
I think
to
it's
me.
a loose connection to RPO. I don't know.
I mean,
if you've got to explain it, it's not funny. But well done, Alex. That was a good effort. I'm not going to try and follow, so there's no judgment here. Hey, Mark,
Go for it, Dan.
Yeah, one other thing that I know you've explained your kind of justification for why you look for organizations or founders that are, targeting the US at some point. But do you know why, or maybe you can explain like what are the core differences between setting up a startup in the UK, Guernsey, Europe, the US? Are you aware of any kind of hurdles or potential upsides for doing that? For context, having just left Guernsey and living in Prague now, I heard a lot of things about EU red tape being very difficult to build and maintain a startup here. But yet you do see cases like Lovable recently coming out. And I feel, being on the ground here, that it's very innovative and the startup scene here is fantastic. Are people just navigating that, or is it genuinely harder?
So I think it's fine to set up and get started. I think that's sort of fine anywhere, actually, largely. And look, there are places with more or less capital around. I think it's about that single huge market, actually, is the reason for the US, right? So if you're in the let's take the comparison with the UK. So GDP is like in the US is like 7 to 8 times what the last time I checked what the UK GDP is. But on the consumer side, people spend more of their more disposable income, they spend more of their disposable income on software products. On the business side, again, businesses spend way more on SaaS products, on software products, in the US than they do in Europe in general, and they're more willing to engage with early stage businesses. Like European businesses are more risk averse on that front in terms of like wanting to sign contracts with early stage businesses. So it's really not about, are the people innovative and able to come up with good ideas? It is about the size of the opportunity in the main. That's the primary thing, and that's the thing that led me there in the first place.
From a founder point of view, right? Why is it that you would kind of advocate for them to go towards the kind of classic San Francisco or US area? Is there anything fundamentally different given the fact that, access to capital should not be that hard when it comes to other jurisdictions?
It is primarily that piece about like you're accessing one bigger market, and if you're targeting one bigger market, it's just easier to grow faster, right? It literally is as simple as that. Yes, there is more capital there, but also, there's a lot of competition for that capital. It doesn't have to be the Bay Area, but it is about targeting. It's about wanting to target that huge market, and it just does enable you to grow faster if you can hit it, rather than, you've got to hit all those different jurisdictions differently. They've all got different regulation. They may all be slightly different go to market in every single thing. So it is actually about which thing gives you the biggest opportunity to be huge and to be huge more quickly. It's literally as simple as that. It's nothing at all to do with European founders don't have good ideas or don't have the ability to go build these things. And there is a stereotype in the US that like European VCs are more risk averse and that European founders are less ambitious, but actually those things all go away if you have gone, I want to go target the US. Clearly you do have that ambition level, right? And so from US VCs, if they really believe you're going for it, they don't worry about that.
I've got two more points before I kind of think maybe we start to wrap this up. Slightly different topics, but I'm going to lead in with one here. We talk to a lot of founders who in the early days have an idea of a product that they think solves a problem, a real world problem for a number of users. And then that business matures, maybe gets funding, Series A, Series B, whatever it may be. But what's the balance between the aspiration of building a genuinely good business that will endure over time versus a founder that just wants to build a business with a kind of exit strategy? And obviously, I know this is slightly biased on your part because you're looking at it from an investment point of view, but do you have a feel for kind of a founder that maybe fears exit? Is that a strength because they want to build something really meaningful and deep and lasting?
So on like day one, I don't want to hear people talking about exits at all. I want to know that you're going to be trying to build a huge business that at scale would be hugely profitable, right? Because that's at the end of the day what it's about. And if you can build a business like that, or you get some way on that path, there are always going to be exit opportunities for you. And of course, I want a founder to make sensible decisions along the way, right? If that doesn't look like it's going to happen, you have to make the right decisions. I genuinely, if you're talking about and thinking about exit on day one, probably what you're doing is capping that upside, right? And actually not being quite as open-minded about what the paths could be, because sometimes you see an opportunity along the way that's different to the one that you first thought of. And if you've got exit to X in your head, you maybe won't notice, oh, there's this even bigger or more plausible opportunity over here.
Nice. And then maybe you could get into the psychology of founders a little bit more, coming right back to Alex's first question. I've read articles on the kind of the personality of a founder that's required to grow an organization, a founder that's required, or like a CEO at this point, to sustain. And there are certain founders that are designed for winding down and kind of end of life. I presume the type of founders that you're involved with are the kind of the build phase, but like as a founder, is it possible to transition between all three, or are you kind of inherently kind of naturally inclined to kind of go for what like growth, maintain, or wind down?
So they have to be able to do the first bit, because that's the bit that you're like effectively, when you're backing them, sort of half hiring them to do, if you know what I mean. And then there are founders that transition and go do that. You think about Coinbase, you think about like Facebook, Google founders sort of went away and then sort of came back. So there definitely are founders that can do the whole thing and that transition. That I think that the question often, it is a different set of skills, and you talk about these sort of wartime versus sort of peacetime sort of leaders, that kind of thing. Some people don't want to do both of them, right? And like day one or day zero in a company, you are always a wartime leader. And then can you transition to a peacetime leader that's still trying to grow aggressively fast, but maybe the risk isn't existential, right? As in, if I don't do this, this business will die. And there's a chunk of people that actually only like the wartime bit, right? That aren't interested in the other bit. And then there are founders that transition as well. It's not always easy to tell up front exactly which ones are going to be able to do both. But when you're investing early, they have to be able to do wartime because that's what it is.
Nice. And then my final question to you is on the future of VC in general. I see a lot of stuff being written at the moment about every business model being disrupted, typically because of AI, and that maybe the VC model is broken and won't survive in the future. And I just wanted to get your thoughts on the future of VC and alternative investment models such as crowdfunding. What sort of room for innovation in your industry might exist, and how does your world look in sort of 3, 5, 10 years, do you think?
Well, as always, it's very hard to know. There's definitely room for VC. There are still businesses. So VC is there for two reasons. Businesses that are going to need like a lot of capital before they get to scale, before they can get profitable, right? And all businesses that would benefit from, you know, growing a lot faster if they had access to capital. And traditionally, it was originally built just for the former. Those businesses there are still a lot of those businesses where there is a huge opportunity, but you need a chunk of capital to get going. And while that exists, VC will still exist.
Great. Alex, do you have any more questions before we wrap up? Mark,
No, I
likewise,
think
if you've
we've.
got anything you want to ask us, please fire away now.
I was going to say, what are you trying to build? How does this podcast fit into it? And which founders are you?
Yeah, well, Alex, you want to take that one first,
Yeah,
since
a
this
loaded
whole podcast is
question.
your baby?
So I mean, from the podcast angle, this was more so just a passion project. And it was the infancy of it came when we realized that, well, I don't know if we retrospectively realized it, but essentially, if you send someone a message, whoever it may be, you usually have to kind of win them over to even get their time, to get their ears, right? And it's like, oh, 10-minute, 15, 20-minute, whatever call. So it's not a lot of sunk cost, but it's like half the time you never get a response. People are uninterested and they don't really listen. So what we devised was then realizing that, if you have someone on for a podcast, they giving you their PA's details, they're giving you 2 hours, they listening, so that was really kind of what the utility of the podcast is and continues to be. It's also a good platform for publicity and making change and just cool conversations. I mean, it's easy to say, oh, it fits into the puzzle in X way, but in reality, we're just kind of passionate about talking to really cool people. So that's where the podcast fits in my mind. And then, I mean, this one's probably a little bit debatable, Dan, in terms of our visions for it. But Mark, you can give us an investment rating.
Yeah,
So
we've actually got a psychologist coming on we're going to do like a real time podcast where this guy's job is to have this exact conversation with founders to try and find any discrepancies and try and kind of highlight any things that may not have been brought out. And we come across it in our sessions. Anyway, I'm really looking forward to that episode because it's going to be raw and honest, and I can't wait to see what comes out of it. But
Amazing.
for me, the podcast didn't fit the initial model because I was like, we've got so much to build with Inso. How do we possibly have time to introduce a podcast into the mix as well? And I'm so glad we did, for everything that Alex just said, meeting and learning from fantastic people. I think in today's day and age, when everything's so short, sharp, instant, even further summarized now with AI, the fact that we can have meaningful, long conversations, I think is incredibly valuable for me as an individual and hopefully for our Inso community and our listeners. Inso for me is like, if you imagine a circle split in the middle, and we sit in the middle of this circle. The one side is kind of innovation as a service. It's, delivering workshops, it's doing leadership training, it's helping businesses solve problems, strategy, all that kind of corporate-y stuff, which I love doing. I'm super passionate about that. I love getting in a room. I love working with startups. I love working with established businesses, multinationals, the military. I love helping people just cut through noise and solve problems really efficiently and learn along the way. It's not traditional consultancy. Ideally, we're teaching people and transforming the innovation culture within the organization. Like that's the goal on that side. But I realized to efficiently do that, we need to build a network. And there's also human, at the moment, there's this anxiety around AI replacing everyone and everything becoming overly robotic. So we wanted to build and foster a community of humans, which can learn from each other. We can leverage as much collective intelligence as possible. We can build a really strong collective intelligence within So as the central point of that. We can connect dots between clients who've got a problem with AI experts in our network. The same for coaches, whatever it is. Any variable of diversity I want on the community side. And the way we deliver that and make it meaningful is that I never want our community to just be a 2D sort of flat. You just sign up and join and read a newsletter once a week. That has its time and place, but INSO is all about energy and doing something different. We host online events where we just throw a random conversation into the start point. It's not random, it's kind of curated on our side, but these are really deep, meaningful connections. We do online events that we learn from each other. So at the moment, we've got a vibe coding session where we're building a really cool project and people are starting to get passionate about that. And people join and dip in and dip out. Online courses, in-person stuff to help develop individuals alongside all this chaos and change with AI is really something that I care about. And I just love sitting in the middle of all this and learning and meeting people, learning from and meeting people from around the world is hugely inspiring for me. So for me, when I describe INSO, it's those two halves. We kind of sit in the middle and act as a bit of a catalyst and a glue for all that. Love it. Absolutely love it.
Thank you.
Anything else anyone wants to get off before we wrap up? And we do have a traditional way of ending the show. Alex will take the reins on that.
Yeah, awesome. Okay, so we've got our closing question from a podcast that we recorded yesterday, actually. So the question is, if you had one last penny, where would you spend it?
If I had one last penny, where would I spend it? So I'm going to make a series of assumptions, which if I've only got one penny, things probably aren't looking good for me. So I want to enjoy it.
Yeah, I'm assuming the penny is metaphorical. It's not a penny sweet. That's it.
Yeah, well, that was it. I was going to buy a penny sweet. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to buy a penny sweet, and I'm going to enjoy that. So there you go. That's exactly what I was about to say, I'm afraid. Am I not allowed that answer? I don't know.
Okay, let's assume that the penny is not an actual penny. If you had one last check, where would you cash it? Maybe let's expand it to that then. And the cash could be open-ended, but the check could be open-ended.
Like, I'm still lacking context, as in, I just actually don't know how to answer this question, whether this is meant to be investing or like I have no money or where I am.
By the way, I did anchor him. I let him know that you were a VC, so he designed this question specifically for you.
It's just where I would put money if I had literally
maybe
one
that's where
last check.
Yeah.
Check to write. Actually, if I think I had one last check to write, I wouldn't write it in VC because it's a high. While you can get great returns from it, it's the higher risk end. A lot of things don't work. If you've only got one check to write, you probably should be putting it in something that is maybe lower risk than VC. I think is the answer that I would throw back.
So Bitcoin, nice. I like that. That's a can of worms. I've opened a can of worms there.
Here we can have another whole conversation, another hour about that for sure.
Nice. Well, thank you so much,
Awesome.
Mark. It's been an amazing conversation. Learned a lot, and like you said, there's way more to be had here. So maybe we'll get you on as a future guest once time evolves a little bit, and we can talk about everything that emerges in between this conversation and the next. But thank you so much. It's been a pleasure. I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thank you very much, and you. Thanks for having me on.
Awesome. Thanks, Mark.
Cheers.